In the heat of the Cold War, as African nations emerged from the grip of colonialism, an ambitious dream was laid across the vast landscapes of the continent. A railway line, over 1,800 kilometers long, stretching from landlocked Zambia all the way to the Tanzanian port of Dar es Salaam. A railway built not by European powers or American financiers, but by Maoist China. The TAZARA Railway, as it came to be known, was meant to be a symbol of liberation, Pan-African unity, and Third World solidarity. But instead, it became a scandalous case study in corruption, incompetence, and ideological delusion. This is the story of the TAZARA Railway scandal and how the hopes of Tanzania, Zambia, and China derailed under the weight of ambition and geopolitics. To understand the TAZARA Railway, we must first understand the Cold War battle for influence on the African continent. By the 1960s, the winds of change had swept across much of Africa. Tanzania had gained independence from Britain in 1961 under the leadership of Julius Nyerere, a charismatic intellectual who championed African socialism. Zambia followed suit in 1964, breaking free from the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland under the leadership of Kenneth Kaunda. Both men were idealists and also nationalists. They also both faced a massive challenge, which was how to develop their young nations without falling straight into neo-colonial dependence. For Zambia, the problem was especially acute. Its economy was almost entirely dependent on copper exports, and those exports had to pass through Rhodesia, which was under a white minority regime led by Ian Smith. South of Rhodesia, there was apartheid South Africa, and to the north, the unreliable colonial rail links to the Congo. Just like Botswana, its neighbor to the south, Zambia was pretty much boxed in. Julius Nyerere and Kenneth Kaunda believed that a new route was essential, one that would bypass the racist regimes and link Lusaka to Dar es Salaam. But who would fund such an audacious project? The World Bank dismissed it as economically unviable, and the Soviet Union was non-committal. Maoist China, however, eager to extend its influence into Africa and to counter both Western and Soviet presence, saw an opportunity. In 1967, Mao Zedong offered a deal. China would fully fund, design, and build the Tanzania-Zambia Railway, which is now known as TAZARA, as a gift to Africa. This was China's largest foreign aid project at the time and its most ambitious. Some 50,000 Chinese workers and engineers were sent to East Africa. They lived in remote bush camps, working alongside tens of thousands of Tanzanian and Zambian laborers. The project took just about 5 years, completed in 1975, and it was hailed as a miracle of Third World cooperation. But underneath the official celebrations lay a serious problem. The railway was plagued by engineering shortcuts. Trains constantly derailed, spare parts were scarce, and signaling systems broke down. The locomotives, which were built in China, struggled to adapt to African terrain and climate. The dream was off to a rocky start, but worse was yet to come. By the early 1980s, the TAZARA Railway had become a logistical nightmare. Freight was being lost, trains stood idle for days, and corruption took root deeply. Internal audits from both countries revealed widespread mismanagement. Reports from the Zambian government in the early 1980s found that ghost workers, fake employees listed on the payroll, were draining resources. In one key station in Mpika, only a fraction of the official staff actually showed up for work. In Tanzania, investigations revealed that fuel theft was systemic. Diesel intended for trains was being siphoned off and sold in black markets. Maintenance budgets vanished, and spare parts either never arrived, or if they did arrive, they were unusable. In some cases, locomotives were actually cannibalized just to keep a few others running. Parliamentary hearings were held in both Zambia and Tanzania, but few, if any, consequences followed. The names of those responsible were rarely disclosed, and no high-ranking official was ever prosecuted. The scandal, like so many in post-independence Africa, was quietly buried beneath bureaucracy and broken promises. By the 1990s, TAZARA was bleeding money. Passenger services were slashed, freight shipments plummeted, and trains began running less frequently and less reliably. By the early 2000s, the railway was operating at less than 10% of its original freight capacity. Communities that had once rallied around the railway now turned their backs on it. The promise had become a burden. In 2012, China returned to the project, but this time around, not as a comrade. Beijing extended a $40 million loan for the rehabilitation of the TAZARA Railway, but this time, the terms were commercial. No more gifts and no more fraternal socialism. What remains today is not a monument to liberation, but a monument to what might have been. To some, the TAZARA Railway is a relic of Afro-Asian solidarity, a symbol of a time when developing nations dared to dream big. But to others, it is a case study in the limits of ideology, the dangers of state mismanagement, and the cost of corruption without consequence. For many Tanzanians and Zambians, especially those in rural areas who wait for trains that rarely come, TAZARA represents a broken promise. And yet, buried beneath the scandal is a story that still matters today. Because TAZARA reminds us that development isn't just about concrete and steel. It's about leadership, it's about accountability, and above all, it's about the long, hard journey between vision and reality. The TAZARA Railway was meant to unite a continent, but instead, it became a cautionary tale of post-independence ambition, Cold War geopolitics, and corruption without consequence.